Candice Morgan. You are GV's first equity, diversity, and inclusion partner.
I am, yes.
What does that mean?
What I usually tell people is, let me now tell you what I actually do day to day. So I focus on a few things. First, I advise GV on expanding our networks in terms of who we hire and who we fund. Right? So typically hiring in venture capital is a lot of times through personal networks. We don't use search firms as much as other industries, and we're changing that. We're actually reaching further and wider to find new talent. We're tapping groups like All Raise and Black VC and VC Familia and so forth to find candidates. We're trying to find entrepreneurs that might be outside of our networks, even talking to our existing entrepreneurs about specifically those from underrepresented backgrounds that we should get to know. And then I also advise our founders and CEOs. So how do you build in inclusion and diversity from the beginning and put it into your product?
Yeah, I think I heard you say earlier, founders really care about having a diverse cap table. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, so when you typically look at the cap table, all the investors that have gone in on a round, and then the angel investors, the super angels that have put in checks, there's not a lot of diversity in the people that own and have equity in the company. And in fact, as you see more underrepresented board members, we saw a record increase in Black board members in 2020, and another quarter of new board members were Black in 2021. They're going on to private boards, they're reviewing cap tables, and they're not as familiar with the economics of venture capital. So we give our founders an opportunity to diversify their cap table, have ownership from a diverse group of angels who they can then tap for advice on how to build their product.
I know you've done some work on identifying folks who are in the industry and are champions of change, to use a phrase that you have used.
Yes.
How do you identify the real allies, advocates, accomplices? I don't know if you prefer one word over another. But who is really walking the talk, and how do you identify those people?
Yeah, walking the talk is about staying in the marathon. I was talking to my boss, our CEO, David Crane, yesterday, and we're like, okay, we have to be in the marathon even if we're at mile 6 and we have a cramp. And those are the people who are still advocating and still really pushing for this work. So in the summer of 2020, we saw everyone out there. We saw statements. In the summer of 2021, we saw some folks out there, and a lot of folks had fallen away. Right now, we are seeing on the 2-year anniversary of George Floyd's death, a lot more silence, and the silence hurts, right? So the people who are real champions of change are thinking about ways to embed equity into the decisions they make on a daily basis. It doesn't have to have a diversity label.
We're 2 years past the burst of social justice protests and all the diversity statements we saw in 2020. It has been quieter recently, and I can think of a number of different excuses that people make. There's a war, there's a reproductive rights rollback on the way, there are economic troubles, there's inflation concern. You can point to any number of things. Is it that people are getting distracted and aren't staying focused? Is it that they're paralyzed by the number of problems? What's your take on why the silence exists and how can they push through?
Yeah, I think that at any given point there are so many things that are pulling on our attention, but being human is something we have to practice all the time, and it is human to understand that even right now when we're on a day after a number of children have, lost their lives in a school, right? Parents dropping their kids off, didn't get to pick up their kids. We are working in this environment. We can acknowledge that, and then we can be there for people who need the extra support to talk about it. We can't expect 110% from people who are human and in the world we're surrounded in. And by the way, still in a 2-year pandemic where we don't know whether we should show up at the event or at the office right now, right? So I think that we shouldn't lose touch with that humanity, and what 2 years ago, what the conversation did was it brought that humanity into business places instead of that hard, cold separation and compartmentalization of being human and doing our work.
Let's talk about angels for a second, because I've been asking a lot of people over the last few days, even few weeks, This economic moment that we're in, the market downturn, I think there's a lot of fear generally.
Yes.
There's always fear around uncertainty, but there's a particular fear that diversity goals will be the first to go, that when economic times get tight, that's what gets struck from the table. Do you share that fear?
I do. In April of 2020, we saw diversity budgets dry up like no other. And then in July 2020, we saw it ricochet, and we saw those budgets get, multiplied 4x and so forth. So yes, I do worry with the combination of fatigue and, cash and the way it's being distributed, that there will be a retraction. However, I am heartened that all the new angels and operators who are learning about, the startup world and about funding and about equity, all the new board members that are coming in as a result of the last couple of years that are now in private companies and bringing others with them, I think that will have a positive impact to sustain these efforts at the same time.